The fourth punch breaks something small in my chest, and a bell rings inside my skull like a coin dropping into a jar. Ding. Tithe collected. Bren Colt, swordsmanship minus 0.31%. Transferred. I fold around the fist the way I'm supposed to. I hit the wall of the East Hall, slide down it, taste copper. Above me, Bren Colt shakes out his knuckles and grins at his two friends. And the three of them stand over me in the alley, between the training halls, the way they've stood over me every Friday since the term began. Toll's gone up, Null, Bren says. Walkway fee. You used the East Path this morning. That's noble ground. The East Path is a public walkway. The toll is not a toll. We all know what this is. This is the thing the strong do to the weak at Ironspire when the instructors agree to be looking somewhere else. And I am the weakest thing this academy has ever admitted, which makes me the best investment Bren Colt never knew he was making. He hits me again. Left side under the ribs, sloppy but hard. Ding. Tithe collected. Bren Colt, swordsmanship, minus 0.29%. Transferred. That's 5 today. 5 is a good day. I cough and let my legs fold and go down into the mud where they like me, and while Dolph and Petra take their turns. A kick each, lazy, bored, the way you'd kick a fence post. The bell in my skull keeps its patient accounting. Ding. Dolph Bremer, footwork, minus 0.3%. Ding. Petra Voss, body reinforcement, minus 0.27%. 7 collections. I do the math on the ground with my cheek in the mud, because the math is the only thing that keeps my face from doing something that would get me killed. The math wants me to smile. Nobody at Ironspire Academy knows it yet, but every single time one of them lands a blow on me, they pay me. Not coin. Better than coin. 1% of the talent behind the blow, the actual, measurable, God's-given talent that this entire world is built on, drains out of them and into me permanently, and the only fee I pay for it is the pain. The pain is real. I want to be honest about that from the start, because everything that happens later is built on it. The tithe does not make the beatings hurt less. Broken ribs are broken ribs. The system calls the pain a collection fee, and some nights the fee is steep. But I grew up in low market, where pain is free and everything else costs money. And if the world is offering me a trade, my bruises for their brilliance, then the world has finally, for the first time in 19 years, offered me a deal worth taking. Look at him, Petra says, somewhere above me. He's not even crying anymore. I think you broke him, Bren. Can't break what's already worthless, Bren says, and they laugh, and the three of them walk off to lunch. 41 seconds of violence later, and not one of them feeling the withdrawal, because that's the beautiful, terrible thing about the tithe. They never feel it. Talent doesn't scream when it leaves. It fades like a language you stop speaking, like a face you stop visiting. A swordsman doesn't wake up weaker. He wakes up a hair slower on a parry he used to own, and blames the beer and trains harder, and swings at the null a little more often to feel strong again. And feeds me again. I peel myself off the ground, and I open the only window in the world that has ever looked out on something good for me. Tith Ledger, row unpicked. Swordsmanship, 4.71 collected. Footwork, 3.62 collected. Body reinforcement, 5.08 collected. Mana sense, 0.44 collected. Total collections this term, 214. They measured my talent when I enrolled. That's the first thing Ironspire does to you. Puts your hand on the resonance stone in front of your whole intake class and reads your worth off a brass dial, 0 to 100. Cedric Vane, the heir who sits at the top of our year, read 88. Bren Colt read 71. The girl they call the archivist read 91. I read 3. 3 out of 100. The proctor tapped the dial twice to make sure it wasn't stuck. Somebody in the back said null, and the word went around the hall the way names do when they're going to stick. And that was that. Rowan Pike, charity admission, resonance 3. The academy keeps 2 or 3 of us every intake, nulls, scholarship meet, because the crown pays a small subsidy for demonstrating that Ironspire is open to all. What the brochures don't say is what the nulls are for. We're pace setters. Sparring dummies that walk to their own beatings. Proof for 300 children of good families that the floor exists and they aren't standing on it. Here's what the floor looks like, in numbers, since numbers are the only language this place respects. 300 cadets in my year. The bottom 30 at final rankings get the binding, a 10-year indenture contract, sold to whichever noble house bids, to repay the Academy's investment. 400 gold of tuition debt, worked off in whatever way the house that buys you sees fit. The recruiters call it placement. The low-market kids who come back from it at 29 call it what it is, when they talk about it at all, which they mostly don't. I am ranked 297th of 300. There are 11 weeks left in the term. So that's the game board. That's what everyone at Ironspire sees when they see me. A 3-point null, 4 places from the drop, a dead man politely attending his own funeral. What none of them see is the morning of my awakening, the day before the resonance test, when something that was not the Academy's brass dial reached into me and took a very different measurement. I was 16. It was the day the letters come, when every kid in the kingdom puts their palm to the parish stone and finds out what they are. I stood in line in Low Market Chapel with my little sister Mina on my shoulders because she wanted to see, and I put my hand down expecting nothing. Because men like my father read 4, and men like his father read 5, and the stone barely warmed under my palm. And then, in a script only I could see, hanging in the air like frost. Talent, null. Vessel, omble. Imple vessels hold the most. System grant, the tithe. Rule 1, every blow struck against you in malice pays a tithe. 1% of the striker's relevant talent. Collected on impact. Permanent. Rule 2, pain is the collection fee. Endure it. Rule 3, what you collect is yours. What you spend is gone. What you hoard will one day be counted. I didn't understand a word of it at 16. I understood it 3 days later when Tam Herrick, 16 years old, resonant 60, going to the Academy on a house sponsorship, knocked me down behind the chapel for being in his way. And something rang like a bell in my skull, and for the first time in my life that night, my hands knew a boxer's guard my hands had never learned. It took me 2 more years to understand the rest, to understand that the world had handed the whole of its cruelty a price tag, that everywhere I had ever lived, being weak meant being hit, and being hit, for me alone, meant getting stronger, that the only thing a null with the tithe had to do to become the most dangerous man alive was the one thing Low Market had already spent 16 years teaching him to do. Take the beating. Do the math. Wait. So when the Ironspire recruiter came through Low Market looking for a subsidy null, and everyone I knew told me only a fool walks into that place wearing a 3, I signed the same day. 400 gold of debt. A dormitory bed with 300 of the most talented, most arrogant, most casually violent young people in the kingdom. My mother asked me why I was smiling when I signed. I told her the truth. I said, "Ma, they're going to feed me." The rest of that first day is bruises and arithmetic, and then it's night, and night is mine. There's a drainage yard behind the old bell tower where nobody goes because it floods ankle deep when it rains, and the noble kids don't own boots they're willing to ruin. I own exactly 1 pair of boots, and they've been ruined since Low Market. I stand in the standing water with a training sword I fished out of the salvage bin, and I do what I do every night. I spend my wages. 4.71 points of collected swordsmanship doesn't sound like much against Brencolt 71. But here's what the brass dial doesn't tell you. Talent isn't a wall, it's a slope. The difference between 3 and 8 isn't 5 points. It's the difference between a man who can't hold a guard and a man who can. Every fraction the trio beats into me comes out here, in the dark, through my hands. Forms I watched the second year's drill for a month and couldn't copy. My body finds them now on the 3rd try. The overhead cut that used to wobble comes down straight. My feet, fed on 3.6% of Dolph Bremer's footwork, have stopped arguing with the mud. Ding. Skill integration, river form, first sequence, learned. I run the sequence until my shoulders burn, and then I sit on the tower steps with a stub of candle and I write to Mina, because I write to Mina every Friday, and I don't lie to her, but I curate. Mina, food is good here. I am learning sword forms. The other students are very generous with their time. I look at the bruise spreading across my ribs, and I decide that's technically true, and I fold 2 silver into the paper, half my week's stipend, enough for her boots and the school fee. Tell Ma the smiling thinking is still working out. I'm sealing it when I realize I'm being watched. She's standing at the edge of the drainage yard with a lantern and a ledger under one arm, which is how she goes everywhere. Lyra Ashford, rank 4, resonance 91, the one they call the archivist. She keeps the scorebooks for the instructors. Every duel, every drill time, every test in our year goes through her hands, and it said she remembers all of it, and nobody jokes about her the way they joke about other girls, because there is something in the way she looks at people, like a column of figures that hasn't added up yet, that makes even the noble boys stand straighter. She is looking at me like a column of figures that hasn't added up yet. You're the Null, she says. Not cruel. The way you'd read a label. Rowan, I say. You were holding river form. First sequence. Her eyes go to the salvage bin sword, then to me, and something behind them is already moving, fast, down a page I can't see. That form has a 4-week average acquisition time for resonance 50s. You tested at 3. Beginner's luck. There's no such thing, says the archivist in my books, and she looks at me for 1 second longer than comfortable. And then she turns and walks back toward the light of the main yard, lantern swinging, and I sit very still in the dark, with my heart going hard. Careful, Rowan. The fists don't scare you. The bookkeeper should. Because here's the thing I know. Sitting in the flooded yard with other people's talent humming in my hands. The monthly resonance retest is in 6 days. Every cadet, every month, palm on the stone, number on the dial, posted in the Great Hall for all 300 to read. It's a formality. Numbers move a point in a year. Nobody's number moves in a month. Mine is going to move. I've done the arithmetic every way it can be done. 214 collections since the term began. Even hoarding most of it, even spending careful, the stone doesn't read what you show it. It reads what you hold. 3 is about to become 11. In front of everyone. In front of Bren Colt, who will not know that the 8 points I gained live in the same ledger as the 3 he's lost. And 4 rows up the Great Hall, a girl with a lantern and perfect books is going to watch the only impossible number of her career walk up to the stone in ruined boots. 6 days. Let them look. It's Friday again before the retest, which means the East Hall, which means the toll. They're waiting where they always wait. Bren cracking his knuckles, Dolph against the wall, Petra flipping a copper she took off a first year. Routine. Comfortable. 3 predators grown fat and lazy on a food supply that never runs, never fights, never tells. Walkway fee null. I could avoid the East Hall. I want that understood before everything that comes after. There's a long way around through the laundry court, and a smarter, softer version of me takes it every time and keeps his ribs whole. I have never once taken it. Because Friday is payday. I don't have any coin, I say, the way I always say, and Bren smiles the way he always smiles and says, then we'll take it out in kind, the way he always says, and the 3 of them close in, and behind my eyes, patient as winter, the ledger opens. They give me 9 collections that afternoon. 9. A record. Bren's showing off for Petra, so he works the body, quick sloppy hooks with his whole talent behind them, and every single one lands like a coin in a jar. Ding. 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 I curl up in the mud and I take my beating, and somewhere in the middle of it, I can't help it. I've stopped being able to help it. I start to laugh. The fists stop. What, Bren says, breathing hard, is funny? I look up at him from the ground. Blood in my teeth, mud in my hair, 4 places from the binding, 3 points on the brass dial. His whole future stacked against my nothing. And 6 days from now, a stone that doesn't lie is going to start telling this entire academy a story. None of them can read, and I'm the only one holding the ledger where it's written. Nothing, I say. Thanks for the lesson. Bren Colt looks down at me, and for the first time in 11 weeks, just for a breath, something moves behind his eyes that doesn't belong to him. It will be months before he learns the word for it. It's the feeling of a man checking his purse. Freak, he mutters and walks. I lie in the mud and watch the sky and listen to the bell. Ding. Tithe collected. Total collections, 223. 6 days, I think. 6 days, and then we start the real arithmetic. Retest day at Ironspire is a holiday nobody enjoys. They hold it in the Great Hall, under the banners of the 12 founding houses, and all 300 of us line up by rank, while the resonant stone sits on its marble plinth like a fat brass god waiting to be fed. One by one, palm on the stone, number on the dial, and a proctor with a voice like a funeral reads your worth out loud to the assembly, while the archivist writes it in the book. It's supposed to be a formality. Talent is a slow river. A cadet who moves 2 points in a year gets an article in the Academy circular. Most numbers haven't shifted since intake, and everyone knows it, which is why retest day is really about the ritual. 300 young gods reminded monthly of exactly which shelf they sit on. The nobles wear their house colors. The instructors wear their medals. The bottom 30 wear the faces of people watching the binding walk toward them 1 month at a time. I stand in my place near the end of the line, and I am so calm it frightens me. Cedric Vane goes early because rank 1 goes early. He lays his palm on the stone like he's knighting it. 88. Steady applause, the comfortable kind, the sound money makes when it's pleased with itself. He steps down without looking at anyone, because looking at people is for men who need something. Lyra Ashford, rank 4. 92, up 1. A murmur rolls through the hall, half admiration, half the particular discomfort of 300 people who have just watched the person who keeps all their numbers quietly raise her own. Then the line grinds on, name after name, number after number, no surprises, the proctor's voice flattening everything into furniture. And then, Colt Bren. Bren walks up with his chin high, because a 71 has nothing to fear from a brass dial. He puts his palm down. The needle swings, settles, and the proctor leans in and pauses. 68. The pause is what does it. Proctors don't pause. The whole hall hears the pause before it hears the number, and then it hears the number, and 300 heads do the same arithmetic at once. 3 points. Down. In 11 weeks. Test it again, Bren says. His voice comes out wrong, too loud for the hall. The stone's dirty. Test it again. They test it again. The needle is not sentimental. 68. Somebody laughs. Just one voice, from the back, strangled fast, but it lands like a slap in a quiet room. Bren Colt comes down off the plinth with a face like bad weather, and I watch him from my place in the line, and I keep my eyes soft and my mouth still, and inside my skull the ledger turns its pages and shows me, in tidy script, where those 3 points went. Dolph tests at 52 down 2. Petra at 55 down 2. The murmur in the hall grows teeth. 3 cadets, 1 dormitory, all sliding. The theories are already breeding down the line. Bad training regimen, dorm curse, drink. I hear all of them. None of them is a skinny Null, with mud-colored eyes standing very still near the back. Pike, Rowan. Half the hall doesn't bother turning. The Null's number is a joke with 1 punchline, and everyone's heard it. I walk up the steps and I put my palm on the stone, and for 1 long breath I feel it reach into me the way it reached into me at intake, a cold, impersonal counting, like a hand going through a purse. Count it all, I tell the stone. Every coin. The needle swings. It doesn't stop where it stopped before. 11, the proctor says, and then, because the hall has gone strange around him, he says it again, louder, as if the second reading might fix the first. 11. Silence has a texture. This one is thick and it crawls. 300 faces, and I can feel every one of them doing the same sum and failing it. Nulls don't move. 3s don't become elevens. The dial has measured 100,000 palms across 2 centuries, and it has never once been wrong, and it is easier. Visibly, audibly easier, for the entire assembled might of Ironspire to believe the machine is broken than to believe the number is true. Test it again. Someone calls from the floor, and it isn't mockery this time. It's need. They test it again. The proctor makes me wipe my palm, as if honesty were a residue. Palm down. Needle swings. 11. The hall doesn't erupt. It's worse than that. It goes low and hot, 100 conversations at a boil, and I come down the steps into a corridor of stairs. Some baffled, some suspicious, 1 or 2, from the bottom of the rankings, wearing something so raw and hungry it hurts to look at. Hope is an ugly emotion on a starving face. I know. I've worn it. At her table below the plinth, Lyra Ashford has not joined the murmur. She has my old number and my new number side by side in her perfect book, and she is not looking at the book. She is looking at me 1 second longer than comfortable, and then her pen moves, and whatever she writes down is not the number. The proctor files an anomaly report before lunch. By dinner, there are 3 theories with legs. The stone is failing, the Null cheated somehow, or the one the bottom 30 are whispering, the dangerous one. The stone was wrong the first time and can be wrong about anyone. The Academy hates all 3. An institution built on a machine that sorts children into futures cannot afford a single strange number, because one strange number means every number is a question, and Ironspire does not sell questions. It sells certainty, 400 gold a year. I eat alone, as always, but the silence around my table has changed flavor. It used to be contempt. Contempt ignores you. This is watchfulness, and watchfulness is the first tax on power, and I pay it with my eyes down and my heart going like a hammer, because 11 weeks of patience just turned a corner, and there is no walking back around it. Bren finds me before curfew. Of course he does. Not the East Hall this time. No ritual, no audience, no toll collector's grin. They take me behind the stables where the lamps don't reach. All three of them, and there's a fourth shape hanging back by the fence with a lantern. And the beating is different tonight. It isn't bored. It's frightened. And frightened is worse, and frightened is so much better. You did something. Bren's fist comes down like he's trying to break a lock. Ding. At the stone. Ding. What did you do, Null? What did you do? Ding. Ding. I could tell him. Lying here in the straw in the dark with his talent raining into me, percent by percent, I could look up and say, Bren, you're doing it right now. You've been doing it all term. Every Friday you carve off a slice of everything your family paid for and you feed it to the boy in the mud. And the stone isn't broken. The stone is the only honest thing on these grounds. It counted your donations. I stood there, I say instead, through a split lip. Same as you. Liar. Ding. Cheat. Ding. You're nothing. Ding. 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 14 collections. 14. A payday so far past any Friday that the ledger's totals blur past the corner of my eye like festival lights. Dolph hauls Bren off me in the end. Not out of mercy, out of math. Even a 52 knows a dead Null means questions, and the three of them stand over me heaving while I bleed into the straw and hold their fear in my hands like a warm coin. Stay away from the stone, Bren says. His voice cracks in the middle of it. Next month you fake sick. You hear me? You don't test. They leave. I lie in the straw and let the pain ring through me. The fee, always the fee. And then the fourth shape by the fence detaches from the dark, and the lantern light walks over, and I look up expecting Lyra's ledger. It isn't Lyra. Instructor Malrec crouches over me the way a man crouches at a market stall. He is 50 and gray at the temples and soft in the middle, and he has the kindest voice on the teaching staff, and every low-market instinct I own starts screaming at once. 14, he says pleasantly. By my count. And you didn't raise a hand. That's either sainthood or strategy, Master Pike. And I've never met a saint from low market. Instructor, I sit up slowly. They jumped me. I'll file. You'll file nothing, because filing is for people the institution protects, and we both know your subscription lapsed. He smiles. It sits on his face like something rented. I watched the stone today. I've watched a great many things at this academy. I find watching so much more instructive than teaching. And what I watched was a 3 become an 11 in 1 month, in a boy who takes his beatings like a man collecting rent. The lantern swings up, and his eyes over it are small and bright and entirely awake. I don't know what you are. Unlike my colleagues, I don't need to. I only need to know what you're worth. I'm not worth anything, instructor. Ask anyone. Modesty. Good, that'll sell. He stands, brushes straw from his knees. Here is the shape of your life, Master Pike. Tomorrow the disciplinary committee reviews the anomaly report. There are men on it who would very much like to solve you with an expulsion, or with something quieter. One word from me, and that review finds a clerical error and dissolves. One different word, and you're a cheating charity case walking home to low market with 400 gold of debt and no diploma. He lets that breathe. I run a modest sporting concern. Saturday nights, under the old armory. Cadets of limited prospects, earning honest bruises for an appreciative audience. You already bleed for free every Friday. Come bleed for coin on Saturdays, and the academy will find you invisible again. Refuse, he shrugs kindly and be solved. The Undercroft. Every bottom ranker has heard of it. The pit under the armory. The betting. The boys who come back moving wrong. The 2 who didn't come back at all and were logged as withdrawals. It is the drain at the bottom of Ironspire where the institution's real arithmetic runs, and Instructor Malrec is standing in the straw offering me a place in it like a man offering an orphan an apprenticeship. He thinks he's trapping me. He is standing in the dark, offering to lock me in a room full of the strongest fists at this academy, all of them highly motivated to hit me as hard and as often as they can, in front of a paying crowd. Careful, Rowan. My face wants to do the thing again. I make it be a beaten boy's face, hollow, cornered, doing sums of fear instead of profit, and I let the silence stretch to the exact length of a young man swallowing his pride, and then I say, quiet and defeated, Saturday. Good lad. Malrek pats my shoulder where Bren's boot went in, and the pain rings like income, and he walks off swinging his lantern and whistling, a fat spider pleased with his web, entirely unaware that he has just invited the fly to dinner. Ding, says the bell in my skull, soft as a promise. New revenue stream identified. There's one more visitor before the night lets me go. She's waiting at the mouth of the stable lane, hugging the wall the way bottom rankers learn too, taking up as little of the world as possible. I know her face from the postings. Sella Marsh, rank 291, 6 places from the drop, a farm country scholarship kid with a resonance of 9, and a father who, the rumor says, already borrowed against her binding price. She's maybe 17. She looks both ways down the lane before she speaks, like the words themselves might be against the rules. They're saying the stone's broken. Her voice is barely a voice. The proctors, everyone, they're saying that's all it was. Maybe it is. I watched, Sella says. I was 8 feet away. They tested you twice, and they wiped the stone, and the needle moved anyway. Machines don't lie twice in the same direction. Her hands are shaking around a strap of her satchel. So I need you to tell me. Because if the number can move, if it can actually move, then it isn't over for the rest of us. My little brothers think it's over. My day signed papers like it's over. She swallows. Is it over? And there it is. The thing I heard in the hall this morning, wearing a starving girl's face in a dark lane. Hope. The most dangerous contraband at Ironspire Academy. The one substance the whole brass machine is built to confiscate at the gate. Because an academy that sells certainty cannot have the livestock believing in movement. I should say something careful. I am one anomaly report and one committee vote from the edge myself, and the safest sentence in the world is, the stone was broken. It moved, I tell her. It can move. Don't sign anything. Sella Marsh looks at me for a long moment, and then she does something nobody at this academy has ever done to me. She bows. The small, real one from the neck, the one you give people who outrank you. They're going to come at you, she says quietly. The ones the numbers feed. You know that. They already do, I say. They've been coming at me every Friday all term. And some Friday soon, I don't say. They're going to start understanding what that costs. I limp back to the dormitory through the dark, and I stop at the wash trough and look at my face in the black water. Split lip, swelling eye, mud in my hair, 11 points on the brass dial, and 237 collections in the only book that matters. 6 days ago, I told the stone, let them look. They're looking now. The bullies, the bookkeeper, the spider under the armory, the committee of frightened men, and behind them all, somewhere up the chain where the real money lives, the houses that buy the bottom 30 by the head. Every single one of them is about to make the same mistake, and it is the oldest mistake in the world, and I have built my whole life on it. They think the way to deal with Rowan Pike is to hit him. Saturday, then. Payday's moving to the weekend. The Undercroft smells like a purse and sounds like a wound. It's an old cistern under the armory, drained a century ago, and forgotten by everyone whose forgetting could be purchased. Stone ring in the middle, sand floor stained the color of old rust, and rising around it in torchlight, tier on tier of the academy's respectable faces with their collars turned up, seniors, 2 instructors I recognize and 1 town magistrate I'm not supposed to. And at the back, bookmakers from the city with slates and chalk, and the flat eyes of men who weigh people by the pound. Saturday night at Ironspire. The brochure doesn't mention it. Malrek meets me at the fighter's gate with a robe over his arm and that rented smile. House rules, Master Pike. You fight until one man can't or won't. No blades in the open card. You're the closer tonight. The crowd likes a story, and tonight's story is the broken stone boy. He drapes the robe on me like a butcher dressing a cut. The odds have you at 40 to 1. Do try to make it interesting for a round or two before you fall down. 40 to 1. I stand in the gate and listen to the crowd price my body, and the ledger stirs behind my eyes, patient, hungry. Interesting, I think. I can do interesting. They put me against a man named Kessler. I remember him. Everyone from the bottom does. 2 years ahead of us, expelled for breaking a boy's back in a sanctioned circle and hitting him twice more after the yield. Resonance 61, all of it in his fists. The academy threw him out the front door, and Malrek walked him back in through the floor, and now he lives down here as pit stock, feeding on Saturday boys, and the crowd loves him the way a crowd loves a fire. He looks at me across the ring, the way Bren looked at me the first Friday. Bored. Certain. A man opening a jar. The bell is a hammer on an old shield rim. Kessler comes across the sand like weather. Here's what I know, that the crowd doesn't, that Kessler doesn't, that even the flat-eyed bookmakers with their perfect instincts for meat cannot know. Every fight has an economy, and everyone in this room but me is reading the wrong ledger. They see a 61 against an 11. What's actually in the ring is a woodcutter swinging at a forest that keeps the chips. His first punch lands like a door slamming. Ding. 61 becomes 60.4. The second folds me over. Ding. I go down and the crowd roars and I get up, and that's the whole plan, the entire strategy, the masterpiece. Get up. Let the strongest fist in the Undercroft do what strong fists do to low-market boys, and keep the change. I won't pretend it was clean. The fee is real, and Kessler's fee is the steepest I've ever paid. By the fourth exchange, my left eye is closing. By the sixth, I hear the C. He's not stupid. Cruel men are rarely stupid about pain, and he plays the crowd, walking me down slow, tenderizing, telling them a story with my ribs. Ding. Ding. The broken stone boy breaking. The odds board chalks me up to 60-1, live, and the tears howl with laughter, and men who teach ethics lectures on Monday wave betting slips at my blood. 19 collections. 22. 26. Between the 7th and 8th exchange, Kessler stops to play the crowd, arms wide, soaking in the noise, and I stand bent over my own knees, dripping onto the sand, and use the pause the way I use everything, to read the room over the swelling of my eye. The tears are a museum of the academy's real face. There's the ethics instructor with his slate. There's a knot of third years chanting Kessler's name with betting slips in both fists. There's the magistrate pretending to be a scarf. And there, 3 tiers up, unmoved, unmoving, Malrek, watching me the way a jeweler watches a stone under the loop, and I understand with total clarity that he isn't watching the fight at all. He's watching for the trick. Him and one shuttered lantern at the top rail. 2 people in this hole came tonight to learn something, and I am about to teach a lesson only one of them can read. Kessler comes back for the 8th, and I go down again off a hook I honestly never saw. Ding, and the sand tastes like rust and coin metal, and the ledger reads him at 52 and falling, 8.5 points of a man scattered across one Saturday night, and I get up. The crowd doesn't understand why the broken stone boy keeps getting up. The crowd thinks it's heart. Heart is the story they'll tell on Monday. It was never heart. It's arithmetic. Every trip to the sand costs me pain I've already budgeted, and costs him 1% of everything he's ever been. And then, in that 8th exchange, the thing happens that I came down here to farm, the thing that changed the fight behind the stables, the thing the tithe was always going to do to a man who deals in single sharp withdrawals instead of Friday installments. Kessler slows. Not much. A half beat on the recovery, a punch that arrives where I was instead of where I am. The crowd reads it as fatigue, big man, long night. But I've been counting. 26 collections at 1% a swing, off the top of a 61. Compounding, the man walking me down has left better than a quarter of his talent in my ledger, and his body has just started sending him letters about it, and he doesn't have the accounting to read them. Getting old, I say, through the blood. He swings hard enough to kill me. It misses by a hand. Ding, because even a miss that grazes is a touch, and the graze pays. He swings again, roaring now, and the roar is the sound I've been waiting for all night, a strong man meeting the mathematics. I stop being an anvil. Everything I've banked comes out at once. His own footwork, Dolph's footwork, the trio's body reinforcement, 4 months of stolen swordsmanship living in my hips and hands with nowhere to go. I slip inside the next swing the way the river form teaches plant and put my elbow through the hinge of his jaw, with 19 years of low market and 26% of Kessler behind it. The sound it makes is the Undercroft going silent. Kessler sways. All that talent, all that cruelty, all those Saturday boys, swaying over the sand like a tree deciding. I look up at him, one eye open, and I give him the last thing I stole from him tonight, which is his own opening line. Stay down, I tell him. It's over for you. He doesn't stay down. Credit where it's due. He gets one more swing off, slow as a barge, and I step around it and sweep his planted leg, his knee, drained of a quarter of its genius, folds like paper money, and Kessler the Pit King goes down face first in the rust-colored sand and does not get up. Silence. Then the Undercroft makes a sound I will hear in my sleep for the rest of my life. 300 respectable people realizing at once that they have lost a very great deal of money. 40-1. I stand in the middle of the ring, dripping, and find Malrek's face at the fighter's gate, gray, calculating, recalculating, and beyond him the bookmakers scrubbing their slates, and I think clear as a bell through the ringing in my skull. Ding. Tithe collected. Total collections, 289. And somewhere above the tiers, leaning on the rail in a plain coat with her lantern shuttered, a girl with perfect books watches the Null spit blood into the sand and writes something down. Malrek pays me in the tunnel after, 3 gold, a closer's cut, docked handling fees that exist because he says them out loud. He counseth the coins into my palm slowly, watching my face the whole time, the spider re-rigging his web around a fly that turned out to have teeth. Kessler was lazy, he says. Fat on easy meat. You understand that's the story everyone up there is telling themselves right now because the alternative story is impossible. The rented smile is gone. What's under it is smarter and much colder. Next Saturday, the odds will be shorter and the meat will not be lazy. That's not a threat, Master Pike. It's bookkeeping. You've cost my patrons money, and my patrons' money is the only weather that matters down here. Win too well, and the Undercroft stops being a game and starts being a solution. He drops the last coin. Whatever it is you're doing, and I will find out what you're doing. Pace it. I take my 3 gold and I go, and the whole way up the tunnel I hold the 2 halves of the night, side by side. 3 gold in my pocket, more money than my mother sees in a month of mending. 289 collections in the ledger, more talent than the Academy's brass god says I deserve to hold in a lifetime. And Icefooter upstairs, already measuring me for a web with thicker silk. Sunday, I do the only pure thing in my week. I write to Mina. 2 of the 3 gold go into the paper, folded flat under wax. I tell her it's tutoring pay, that the rich boys here need help with their letters, which is even technically true if you count what Bren's fists have been teaching me to read. I tell her to buy the winter boots, the good ones with the double sole, and to put the rest in the tin behind the flour, where Ma keeps pretending she doesn't keep money. I tell her the smiling thing is still working. I don't tell her that her brother's face doesn't close all the way anymore, or what a crowd sounds like when it bets against your bones. Curate. Always curate. The whole point of standing in the drain at the bottom of the world is that the people you love never have to learn the smell of it. She finds me at the post window. Of course she does. She has access to the logs, and the logs know everything, and I've been sloppy in the one ledger I can't read. Rowan Pike. Lyra Ashford sets her book on the counter between us like a magistrate laying down a writ. Rank 297. Resonance 3, corrected to 11. 0 recorded combat instruction. 0 house sponsorship. She opens the book. Her handwriting is small and ruthless, and there are pages of it, and I see my name at the top like a specimen label. Since the 3rd week of term, Colt, Bren minus 3.2. Bremer Dolph minus 2.1. Voss Petra minus 1.9. Herrick Tam, your year at the parish school, currently sponsored at Greyfield, minus 4 over 2 years, flagged by their archivist as chronic decline. She looks up. Every falling curve in 2 Academy's books intersects at exactly 1 variable. Do you want to tell me what the variable's name is, or shall I read it to you? The post room is empty. The window clerk has wandered. It's just me, the bookkeeper, and the end of 11 weeks of careful. You haven't reported it, I say. You've had those numbers for days. A cheating anomaly gets the committee a tidy answer, and the archivist a commendation. So you want something the committee can't give you. Something crosses her face, quick, sharp, gone. My brother was ranked 273, she says. 6 years ago. Marcus Ashford. You won't find him in the honor books. I keep them, I've looked. The binding took him for a border levy in House Vane's colors, and the levy took him into a ravine, and the house sent my mother a voucher for his boots. Her voice never rises. It's worse than if it did. I was 11. I decided the numbers had killed him, the ranks, the prices, the whole brass arithmetic, and I have spent 6 years getting my hands on every book this academy keeps, waiting to find the number that breaks the machine. She turns the ledger around and slides it across to me, my own impossible curve rising off the page like a hand out of water. Last week I watched a 3 become an 11. So here is my offer, Rowan Pike. I don't report what I can't explain. You explain it. And if what you are is what I think you are, a number the machine can't price, then you and I are going to do some bookkeeping of our own. And if I lie to you, you won't, says the archivist, with the serene certainty of a girl holding every record I have. Leers pad their curves. Yours is clean. Whatever you're hiding, you're proud of it. You've just never once in your life had anyone safe to show it to. That lands somewhere. I don't let things land. Careful, Rowan. The fists don't scare you, and the spider doesn't scare you, and this, a lantern, a ledger, and the first person at this academy to look at you like a phenomenon instead of a punching bag, this should scare you most of all. Friday, I hear myself say, behind the bell tower, bring the book. She gathers her ledger, and at the door she stops and doesn't turn around. For what it's worth, she says, I ran your curve forward. If the variable holds, you clear the binding line in 5 weeks. You take the top 100 by spring. A pause 1 second too long, the first imprecise thing I've ever heard from her. The last person whose numbers I believed in was my brother. Don't make my books wrong twice. Then she's gone, and I stand at the post window with my 2 gold, gone to low market and my name in a genius's ledger, and I notice the Monday morning postings on the board across the hall. Rank 289. Up 8. The clerk has chalked it without comment, but somebody, some bottom 30 somebody, has underlined it twice, hard enough to break the chalk. Sella Marsh finds excuses to walk near me twice that week. Dolph Bremer changes direction in a corridor rather than pass me. And Friday afternoon, for the first time in 11 weeks, the East Hall alley is empty. No toll. No trio. Payroll's frightened, which is bad for business, and behind my eyes the ledger hums, no longer a beggar's cup but a bank, and banks, as everyone in low market knows, do not stay secret. They get robbed, or they get bought, or they get burned. Ding, says the bell in my skull, very softly, and, for once, I don't think it's counting talent. Bren Colt challenges me on a Tuesday, in the dining hall, in front of everyone, because that's what drowning men do. They grab the thing that's drowning them. I'm halfway through the gray porridge they feed the scholarship tables when the hall changes pressure. Conversations die in a wave from the door inward. Bren crosses the floor with Dolph and Petra flanking him like pallbearers, and he's wearing his house vassal colors, the Vane blue and silver trim he only wears when he wants to remind people whose money stands behind him, and he stops across my table and slaps a glove down next to my bowl. An actual glove. The nobles teach them that. There's a whole etiquette to destroying someone. Rowan Pike, he says my name like it's the charge sheet. Charity admission. Null. Cheat. The last word cracks across the hall, and 300 spoons stop moving. I don't know what you did to the stone, and I don't care. Before the month's out, the committee will void your enrollment anyway. But my family name has taken questions because of your arithmetic. His jaw works. He's rehearsed this. The rehearsal is fraying. So I'm not waiting for clerks. Sanctioned circle. Saturday noon. Blades blunted, yields honored, Proctor's rules. Unless the Null would rather crawl home to low market now and save us the sand. The hall holds its breath, 300 faces swinging from him to me like a crowd at a net game. Here is what everyone in that hall knows. A sanctioned circle is not a stable yard beating. It's public proctored recorded, entered into Lyra's books under both names, with rank consequences. Bren is offering to execute me by daylight legally, and enter it in the minutes. 68 against 11. Even after the stone moved, even after the whispers. That's the visible mathematics, and visible mathematics is the only kind this academy believes. Here is what nobody in that hall knows. I have spent 11 weeks praying nightly to whatever gods watch low market for exactly this moment, and the only fear in my body is that he'll come to his senses and take it back. I look at the glove in my porridge steam. I look at Bren Colt, at the bully who held my whole first term in his fists, the toll collector, the boy who has already, without knowing it, financed his own destruction one Friday at a time, and I give him my answer loud enough for the cheap seats. Saturday's payday, I say. Works for me. Confusion moves through the hall. Payday? And up at the head table, Instructor Malrek goes very still over his wine, because Malrek is the one man in the room who hears the joke, and the joke tells him something about Saturdays he will spend the rest of the week failing to unhear. 2 tables down, Lyra Ashford closes her eyes like a woman listening to an avalanche start and opens them and begins to write. The circle is chalked at noon and the whole academy comes. They stack the colonnade, they crowd the balconies, first years on shoulders, kitchen staff in the doorways. The proctor reads the rules in a bored drone, blunted training blades, first yield or incapacity, strikes to the downed man forfeit, and the archivist sits at the recorder's table with her book open to a fresh page, and I notice, because I notice her now, that she has ruled the page into 2 columns in advance. 1 column for what the crowd will see, 1 for what the numbers will say. Bren looks good. I'll give him that for free. The Colts have been vassal swordsmen to House Vane for 4 generations, and it's all there in the opening stance. The blade angled just so, the weight coiled, 68 points of inherited talent, and 14 years of paid instruction wrapped in academy silk. Across the chalk, I stand the way the salvage yard taught me, plain guard, ruined boots, and I hear the odds moving through the crowd like wind through wheat. Nobody says 11. Everybody thinks it. The proctor drops his hand. Bren opens beautifully. That's not sarcasm, it's the exact problem I'm counting on. Beautiful swordsmanship is trained swordsmanship, and trained swordsmanship commits. He comes in on the academy's own textbook line. 3-step entry, feint low, cut high, and I do the thing I've drilled 10,000 times in a flooded yard with his own stolen fractions. I let it land. Not the killing line. I give him the shoulder instead of the neck, roll the worst of it, wear the rest. The blunt edge hits like a dropped beam. The crowd roars. First blood of a kind, first point, Bren's point, and the colonnade chants his name, and behind my eyes, quiet as snowfall. Ding. Tithe collected. Bren Colt, swordsmanship, minus 0.68. Committed strikes pay double weight. I learned that in the Undercroft, the harder the intent behind the blow, the richer the collection. A bored Friday kick is small change. A full shoulder cut thrown in front of the entire academy with 4 generations of family honor behind it. That's a banknote. He hits me 4 more times in the first 2 minutes. The crowd loves him. He's carving up the cheating Null exactly as advertised, textbook lines, beautiful angles, and every single one lands like a coin in a jar. Ding. 67 and falling. Ding. I stagger and bleed where a blunt blade can make you bleed, and pay the fee and keep the change, and somewhere in the 3rd minute I see Lyra's pen stop moving in the first column and start moving only in the second, because she's watching the thing I told her about on Friday night behind the bell tower, watching it happen in public, in real time, to a boy who has no idea he's the exhibit. Bren's 5th attack is a half-step slow. His 6th wobble's at the top of the arc, the same wobble my overhead cut used to have, before I inherited better. And I watch it arrive in his face, the way it arrived in Kessler's, the way it will arrive in every strong man on the ladder above me sooner or later. The first cold, impossible suspicion that the well is not refilling. What he starts low, only for me, mid-bind. Tall, I say, just as low. Walkway fee. You've been paying it all term. And then I stop banking and start spending. The crowd doesn't understand what happens next. And the beauty of it is they don't need to. They see the Null slip a textbook cut that has stopped being textbook, see him step inside the reach of a swordsman who has stopped being sure, see a salvage yard guard flow into river form's 2nd sequence. The form Bren's own instructors charge 40 gold a term to teach, and take the blade out of Bren Colt's hand at the wrist turn, like taking a toy from a tired child. They see Bren scramble for it, and they see him put on the ground with his own family footwork, flat on his back in the chalk, with a blunted point at his collar. The colonnade goes so quiet I can hear the chalk dust settle. Yield, I say. Bren looks up the length of the blade. 62 points on his next reading, though he doesn't know that yet. 4 generations of vassal silk in the dirt of a public circle. His 2 seconds standing white-faced at the rope. His house's trim on his shoulders and his name in the recorder's book under the word that is about to happen to him. and I watch him understand, in front of everyone, the shape of the last 3 months of his life. He held the jar. He never once asked what was inside it. Yield, Brencolt says, and the word comes out of him like a tooth. The proctor calls it. The hall doesn't cheer. It exhales, 300 people making one long stunned sound, and then the bottom tables, the scholarship tables, the 200s, they cheer. Selamarsh is standing on a bench. Somewhere a kitchen boy is banging a pot. Order at Ironspire is a brass god on a marble plinth, and today at noon, with the whole congregation watching, something spat in its eye. I give Bren my hand up off the chalk, because Lowmarket buries its dead, and I want the whole colonnade to see which of us does the burying. He doesn't take it. That's fine, too. Some lessons need a second Friday. The campus rearranges itself around the result, the way water rearranges around a dropped stone. By Sunday, the East Path has traffic again, bottom rankers, walking it in 2s and 3s, unhurried, daring the air itself, because the toll is dead and everyone knows who killed it. Petra Voss returns the copper she took off that first year, publicly, in the dining hall, with a mumbled sentence nobody quite catches. By midweek, she's eating at a different table, out of the blue and silver trim, done with the whole enterprise the way a gambler is done, after watching a friend lose a hand he can't stop thinking about. Dolph Bremer catches me by the wash troughs on Wednesday, opens his mouth, closes it, and finally settles on, "I didn't know it was. We didn't know you were," and cannot finish the sentence, because the honest end of it is we didn't know you were a person until you could hurt us. And even Dolph can hear how that one lands. I let him not finish. His footwork lives in my feet either way. Justice at Ironspire is like everything else at Ironspire. It arrives exactly when you stop needing it. And Thursday morning there's a letter under my door with Lowmarket mud on the corner of it, and I sit on my bunk and hold it a minute before I open it. Because Mena's handwriting on an envelope is the only currency this place hasn't learned to counterfeit. The boots are red. Ma said the double-sole ones only come in brown, but the cobbler had one red pair in my size, which means the gods intended it. That's just logic. Ma cried about the money and pretended it was onions. It is never onions. School says my letters are the best in my row now. When you are a famous knight, or whatever it is they are making you into up there, I will require a red cloak to match the boots. Tell the generous rich boys I said thank you for the tutoring money. Tell the generous rich boys I said thank you. I fold the letter flat and put it inside my shirt, against the ribs Bren's blunt blade bruised, and I sit there while the dormitory wakes up around me. And for one dangerous minute the arithmetic goes quiet, and the whole thing is just simple. Red boots. Ma's onions. A little girl's letters, best in her row, paid for one collection at a time by every fist this academy has thrown at my face. Let Cedric Vane audit that ledger. Let him price it. There is not enough money in his 300-year house. The committee doesn't void my enrollment. They can't. Not after a proctored, recorded, sanctioned win over a top 50 blade. The paperwork would have to explain what everyone saw, and no clerk alive wants to write the sentence that explains me. Malrec makes the anomaly review dissolve exactly as promised, then sends me a note by Pitrunner that says only Saturday. Closer. Odeds will be interesting now. The machine, adjusting. The spider, re-rigging. And on Thursday, the academy finds out what it costs when the ladder's upper rungs start paying attention. He's waiting for me in the archive courtyard. No seconds, no crowd, no glove. Cedric Vane, rank 1, resonance 88, heir of the house whose trim was in the dirt on Saturday. Up close, he's less like a duelist than an audit. Tall, unhurried, the stillness of money 3 centuries deep. He doesn't posture. Posturing is for men who need something. My house sponsors 12 cadets at this academy, he says. No greeting. 9 of them have declined this term. Colt worst of all, and Colt's line has produced reliable 65s for 100 years. The stone hasn't drifted. I had our own house stone checked against it. The instruction hasn't changed. He studies me the way Lyra did at the drainage yard, but where hers was a column of figures, wanting to balance, his is a ledger looking for the leak. In 300 years, the only new variable at this academy is a scholarship Null, whose number moves in the wrong direction at the exact rate my house's numbers move in the right one. I don't believe in curses, Pike. I believe in transfers. He steps closer. He is very good. I never see his weight move. I don't know what you are, Cedric Vane says quietly, but I know what you cost. And when I can prove the mechanism, I will price you accordingly. And my family buys what it prices. He looks at me a moment longer, then adds, with what I will later understand was the closest thing to mercy anyone of his name ever offered me. Stop rising, Null. The next rung up from here isn't students. He leaves without waiting for an answer, which is how you leave when you're used to being the end of conversations. And I stand in the archive courtyard with my heart drumming, and the ledger humming and one thought rising through all of it, cold and clear as the bell. He said prove the mechanism. Not find. Prove. Which means House Vane is already looking, and the only two places in the world the mechanism is written down are behind my eyes, and in two neat columns in the book of a girl who ruled the page before the duel even started. Friday behind the bell tower just became the most dangerous appointment at Ironspire. The Undercroft on my second Saturday is a different animal, and the difference is me. The odds board has my name at 3-1. The tiers are fuller. Word of the broken stone boy has crawled up out of the drain and through the town. And there are faces tonight I've never seen. City faces, coin-heavy, and among them, in a curtained box that wasn't there last week, a shape I can't make out and a house crest I can. A silver falcon on blue. Vane money, come to watch the anomaly with its own eyes. Malrec has sold tickets to my audit. He meets me at the fighter's gate, and there's no robe this time, and no rented smile either. You cost the wrong people a great deal last Saturday, he says. So tonight the card corrects itself. You're closing against Corvo. Even the gate crew goes quiet at the name. Corvo isn't pit stock and isn't a cadet. He's a retired Border Army blade master Malrec imports from the city when the Undercroft needs a certainty. Resonance 74, all sword, 20 years of levy campaigns, and a reputation for finishing his nights early. And then Malrec says the part he's been saving, soft, with the small bright eyes doing all the smiling. Live steel. Sanctioned circles use blunts, I say. Even down here uses what the purse says. He steps close enough that the gate crew can't hear. Here's your arithmetic, Master Pike, since you're fond of it. The book on you tonight is rigged for exactly one profitable outcome, and that outcome is you, carved before the 10th minute. Survive that long, and the house pays triple, and I burn the anomaly report for good. Fall early and, well, low market berries cheap. He pats my cheek twice the way you'd pat a coin purse. Nothing personal. You made yourself expensive. Expensive things get sold. So that's the shape of the night. 10 minutes. A master. Real edges. Lyra had tried to stop me coming. She'd been waiting at the armory stair at dusk, with her book under her arm, and a page already turned to the numbers, because of course she had the numbers. She has everyone's numbers. Corvo, retired blade master, 3 recorded Undercroft closings. She'd recited, cold and fast, the way she gets when the figures are bad. Average duration 4 minutes. 2 of the 3 left on doors. Rowan, whatever your arithmetic says. His says 74 and steel doesn't yield and doesn't tire and doesn't wobble. The variable that saved you against Kessler needs time and volume. A master gives you neither. He gives you 6 clean cuts and a funeral. And if I don't walk down those stairs, Malrec files the report, the committee solves me, and the binding takes me anyway, just slower and in your brother's colors. I'd watched her flinch and hated myself for the shape of the sentence. This is the only table where they deal me cards at all, Lyra. Rigged is still dealt. She'd looked at me a long moment, the audit eyes running some columns she didn't share, and then she'd said the most Lyra thing she has ever said. Then stop thinking of it as a duel. Duels are symmetric. Make it bookkeeping. He has one account and it's enormous, but you've seen what withdrawal curves do to men who've never once checked a balance. And she'd pressed something into my hand, a page torn from her own book, Corvo's 3 closings charted stroke by stroke in her small, ruthless hand. He opens every exchange off a low feint. All 3 fights. Masters have habits too. They just call them style. I have that page against my ribs now, next to Mena's letter. Numbers on one side of my heart, red boots on the other. I stand in the gate, watching Corvo warm up across the sand, economical, bored, a man stretching before a shift at the mill, and the fear arrives properly then, the old kind, the low-market kind, the kind that knows exactly what steel does to bodies because it's watched. I let it come. I've never once trusted a plan the fear didn't attend. Then I opened the ledger and read my balances like a prayer, swordsmanship 19.9, footwork 11.2, body reinforcement 12.6, 291 collections, 11 weeks of Fridays, 1 Kessler, 1 Bren, and across the sand, 74 points of exactly the currency I'm poorest in, wrapped in 20 years of knowing how to spend it. Every cut is a collection, I tell myself, as the bell hammers. Tonight the fee is just sharper. The first 2 minutes teach the entire Undercroft what a master is. Corvo doesn't attack the way cadets attack. No textbook lines, no beautiful commitments, nothing for the crowd. He fences like a man doing sums, a flick here that opens my forearm, a draw cut there that parts my sleeve and the skin under it, small withdrawals, precise, contemptuous, each one arriving from an angle my stolen fractions half recognize a heartbeat too late. Ding. Ding. The collections come rich. A master's talent pays like nothing I've ever banked, and the fee comes richer. By minute 3, my left arm is wet to the wrist, and the sand under me is spotting red, and the tears are chanting, and in the curtain box, the silver falcon doesn't move. Minute 4, he nearly ends it. A feint I buy with my whole body, a line change I never see, and the only reason the thrust takes shoulder instead of throat is that Dolph Bremer's footwork fires on its own, and moves me half a hand width without being asked. The steel goes through the meat under my collarbone and out, and the Undercroft screams with joy and horror in one voice. Ding. Tithe collected. Corvo swordsmanship, minus 0.74. Doubled, intent lethal. I stagger back, and something happens that has never happened before. The bell doesn't stop. Warning, says the script behind my eyes, not the soft ledger hand, something older and harder, frost across glass. Vessel capicus perched. Integration queel agant. Cockscience suspended pending room. And the world doubles. 2 Corvos circle me. 2 rings of torchlight. My own heartbeat arrives late, like sound across a valley, and my nose is bleeding without being hit, and I understand, in the sand, on real steel with 6 minutes left on a rigged clock, what Rule 3 was warning me about all along. What you hoard will one day be counted. The vessel is not bottomless. I have spent 11 weeks pouring other men's talent into a low-market boy's body. And the body has walls, and I have just hit them. And every collection from here on out isn't income. It's flood. Corvo reads the wobble and comes in to close his early night, and the next 90 seconds are the worst of my life. I can't bank my way through him anymore. Every cut he lands now rings against a full vessel and blurs my sight worse, and I can't outfence 74 points down to 50-some with a queue of suspended talent screaming behind my eyes. The crowd sees the broken stone boy breaking. Malrek sees his purse balancing. The Falcon box sees its audit resolving. So I stop fighting like an academy boy, because I never was one. I fight like low market. Sand first, a fistful into the master's eyes at the bind, and the tears howl foul at a pit with no rules. The lantern pole next. I put my ruined shoulder into it, and drop a stanchion of burning oil between us, and while Corvo steps around the fire like the professional he is, I do the thing no professional would ever model, the thing that costs what I have instead of what I lack. I spend the queue. Not integrate, there's no room. Spend. Burn it raw the way the system burned it into me, a one-time fortune of suspended collections dumped into 4 seconds of a body that was never meant to hold them. What you spend is gone, says Rule 3, and I feel it go. 19 suspended points of a blade master's craft, flashing through my arms like lightning through a wire, there and gone forever. 4 seconds of borrowed mastery. 4 seconds is enough. Corvo comes out of the firelight into a river-form third sequence executed, at a level I will never touch again in my life, and I watch 20 years of border campaigns try to reorganize around it, and arrive late for the first time all night. The salvage bin blade turns his cut, runs the steel, and opens the tendons across the back of his sword hand, shallow, surgical, unforgivable, and the master's blade lands in the sand, and the Undercroft goes silent for the second Saturday in a row. Corvo looks at his open hand, then at me, swaying flooded, bleeding from 6 places, 4 seconds of genius already dead in my arms. 20 years of reading fights, and I watch him read this one right down to the bone, and then Blade Master Corvo does the most professional thing anyone has ever done to me. He picks up his sword with his left hand, sheathes it, and bows. Time, he calls to the box in a parade ground voice. The boy stands. Pay your books. The Undercroft detonates. Triple payouts on a 3-to-1 closer bleed the house white, Malrek's face at the gate is a foreclosure notice, and in the curtain box, the silver falcon rises and goes without waiting for the sand to clear, having seen, I will later learn, exactly what it came to see. Not whether the Null could win. How? I don't remember leaving the ring. I remember the tunnel, and the wall of it hitting my good shoulder, and then a lantern, unshuttered, and a voice that has never once been imprecise saying, "Idiot. Idiot. Hold still," and then I remember the archive loft. She stitches me on a table older than the academy, between shelf stacks of every number anyone at Ironspire has ever been reduced to. Needle, wine, no trembling in her hands at all. My mother's a low-market midwife, don't look so surprised, and while she works, the fever comes up off the flooded vessel like heat off a forge, and somewhere in that long red-lit hour, delirious, careful for 11 years and careful for 11 weeks, I stop being careful. I tell her all of it. The chapel stone, the frost script, the tithe 1%, the fee, the doubling on intent, Kessler slowing, Bren's beautiful wobble, the cue, the flood, the 4 spent seconds of another man's 20 years. She doesn't gasp and doesn't write. The one night of her life, the archivist takes no notes. She just listens with those audit eyes until the whole impossible account is out of me and lying on the table between us with the bloody thread. Say the third rule again, she says at last. What you collect is yours. What you spend is gone. What you hoard will one day be counted. Lyra Ashford is quiet a long moment. Then it's not a warning about capacity. Capacity was tonight, and it announced itself in plain script. Your system doesn't hint, Rowan. It itemizes. Counted is different language. Counted is what a creditor does. She looks at me over the lantern, and for the first time since I've known her, the bookkeeper looks unsettled by a number. Every ledger in this academy has 2 ends. Somebody writes the entries. Somebody, eventually, audits them. You've been thinking of the tithe as your power. She ties off the last stitch, neat as a signature. Tithes have a collector, Rowan. Tithes go to someone. The fever holds me at the edge of sleep, and her voice follows me over it, low, working the way her pen works, and the last thing I hear before the dark takes the ledger and the loft and the lantern all together is Lyra Ashford saying, to herself, in the tone of a girl who has finally found the number that breaks the machine and is beginning to fear it found her first. We need to know who's on the other end of your book. I wake at noon on the loft floor under someone's coat, with my shoulder packed and strapped and a headache like a struck bell, and the first thing I see is the table. She's covered it in paper while I slept. Charts. My charts, collections per week, integration rates, the flood point from last night marked in red and labeled in her small hand. Capatis, observed. Lyra herself is asleep in the chair with her boots on the windowsill and ink on her chin, and the sight of it does something to my flooded chest that no ding announces. She wakes when I sit up and starts talking before her eyes are properly open, because her mind doesn't seem to have slept at all. Your vessel isn't fixed. That's the finding. Look, the red line tapped twice. You flooded at roughly 43 held points last night. But at intake you tested 3, and the frost script called you an empty vessel like it mattered. Vessels are containers, Rowan. Containers are built. Every point you've properly integrated, trained, drilled, made yours in that flooded yard, sits inside the walls and stretches them. It's the raw hoard that floods you, the collections you bank, and never work. Which means the vessel grows the same way anything in low market grows. My mouth gets there before my head does. Work. Nightly integration. No more pure hoarding. She's already writing the regimen because of course she is. You drill everything you collect within a day of collecting it. We expand the walls before anyone forces you to your limit again. Because they will, Rowan. Last night the Falcon box watched you flood. Vane saw the mechanism cost you something, even if they don't know what. The next person who wants you dead won't send a master to cut you. She looks up, and the audit eyes are grim. They'll send a crowd and let you drown in your own income. So the archive loft becomes a war office, and my nights split in 2. The flooded yard for the body, integrating every banked fraction until the vessel's walls ache and stretch, and the loft for the head, where the archivist builds the other weapon, the paper one, pulling 6 years of quiet records into one terrible ledger with 2 names circled at the top of it. Malrek's Undercroft take, and the house that buys more bound cadets at lower prices in higher volume than the other 11 founding houses combined. silver falcon, blue field. Some Fridays you collect in bruises, some in gold. The best collections of my life were made in a paper loft at 2 in the morning, one column at a time, next to a girl who rules her pages in advance. Cedric Vane does it by the book, because the book belongs to people like him. There's a provision in the Academy charter, Lyra could quote me the page, called a trial of standing. Any cadet of the first rank may formally challenge irregularities in the order of merit and put a lower cadet's rank to the blade. It exists so that old blood can discipline new numbers. It has been invoked 4 times in a century. On the first morning of my 13th week, it's posted on the great hallboard with 2 names on it, and the entire Academy stops breathing to read them. Vane Cedric, first of 300. Peak, row 1, 261 and irregular. No glove in my porridge this time. No dining hall theater. Just chartered process, stamped by the provost's office the same morning it was filed. Fastest stamp in institutional history, Lyra notes acidly, because this is what it looks like when the machine itself wants a result. Bren was a boy defending his pride. This is a house defending its books, with the Academy holding its coat. He watched the Corvo fight, Lyra says in the loft that night, papers everywhere, her voice doing the cold fast thing. Understand what that means. Everyone else watches you win and sees a miracle. Cedric watched you flood. He saw the nosebleed, the doubling, the 4 seconds. He doesn't know the mechanism, but he knows there's a cost curve, and he knows it bends the wrong way when you're hit too much, too fast. She lays out the page she's built on him the way she built one on Corvo, except this one is 3 years deep. Cedric Vane. Resonance 88. Undefeated in circles. And look at the pattern. He doesn't win by hitting. He wins by not being hit. Control fencer. Binds displacement exhaustion. 4 of his last 6 opponents never landed on him at all, and 3 of his wins ended with 0 strikes thrown against him. She looks up and says the thing I've already seen. Rowan, your entire power is a tax on people who touch you. He's the first opponent who's arriving with a plan to never pay it. The week before the trial, the Academy shows me what a house is. It's small things first. The scholarship tables get inspected for contraband, twice, mine most thoroughly. Sella Marsh's father's loan is abruptly called in by a Vane chartered bank. Then abruptly extended again, a hand closing and opening, so the whole bottom 100 can watch the fingers. 2 of the boys who cheered loudest at Bren's yield find their practicum marks corrected downward. Nobody files anything against me directly, because Cedric wants me whole and legal for the chalk. The house just walks its weight across the campus once softly, the way a very large animal turns over in the dark, and lets everyone feel the floor move. And still, this is the part they'll never model, the part money always misses. Still, the night before the trial, I find things left at the foot of my bunk. A jar of liniment, no note. Half a honey loaf. A dented practice vambrace oiled and mended. A dozen small contraband kindnesses from people with nothing. For the Null who taught the stone to move, and I sit on my bunk with a stolen fortune behind my eyes and a honey loaf in my lap and understand that whatever happens under the 12 banners tomorrow, I am not walking into that circle carrying only my own weight. The circle they chalk for a trial of standing is twice the size of a duel ring, and they hold it in the great hall itself, under the 12 banners, with the provost presiding in her chain of office and the whole Academy commanded to attend, because the point of a trial of standing is the audience. Order publicly restored. The irregular number publicly corrected. In the front gallery sits a row of silver falcons. House Vane has come in strength, Lord Treasurer and retainers, to watch the heir reprice the anomaly. The provost reads the terms in a voice like a gavel, blunted steel, no yields barred, victory by incapacity, submission, or the presiding officer's call. Denna Caraway, chain glinting, eyes flat, the woman whose office stamps the binding contracts, fastest stamp in institutional history, and I stand in the chalk listening to her recite fairness and think, every rung of this ladder is in the room today. Good. Let them all watch. The bell. Cedric doesn't attack. He moves the way weather moves, no openings offered, no lines committed, a blade that exists everywhere I want to step and nowhere I can tax. I test him twice in the first minute, and both times my cut dies against a displacement so soft it feels like courtesy, and he lets me slide past and doesn't counter. Doesn't touch me. The gallery murmurs. A control fencer conceding tempo, spending nothing. and I hear his plan as clearly as if he'd read it aloud. Wear the Null down on his own aggression, force the flood with patience instead of fists, win without ever making a deposit. 3 minutes. 5. He herds me around the chalk like a sheepdog with a lamb, and my ledger stays silent. And silence, for the first Saturday of my life, is the sound of losing. The crowd feels it turn. The falcons in the gallery have started to smile. Somewhere behind the recorder's table, Lyra's pen has stopped, and I'm breathing hard now, his exhaustion game working exactly as charted, and inside the quiet of my own skull, I finally do what low market does when the fair game is rigged. I stop playing it. Your house bought 31 bound last year, I say. Conversational, loud enough for the first gallery rows. Cedric's blade doesn't waver. Lord Treasurer's up there in the silk. Ask him the average price. Bind displace courtesy. 9 of your own sponsored cadets declining this term, and your family's answer was to check the stone for drift. Wrong ledger vein. It's never the stone. His weight shifts, a half-thought controlled instantly. The crowd's gone graveyard quiet because nobody talks in a trial of standing, and I keep talking, walking the chalk, hurting now instead of herded. You told me to stop rising because the next rung isn't students. You're right. It's the people who priced your grandfather's levies. 60 gold ahead, wasn't it? The year they took the ravine road? My friend keeps books. Marcus Ashford. Rank 273. Your father's colors. Be silent, Cedric says. Even. Almost even. Boots, I say. They sent her mother a voucher for his boots. And Cedric Vane, 3 centuries of control, undefeated, arriving with the one perfect plan, commits. The cut he throws is beautiful and furious and utterly committed. The full 88. Behind it, and it lands because I step into it and take it across the guard and the forearm with everything I have learned about wearing a blow, and the great hall hears the crack of steel on bone and gasps. And, behind my eyes, doubled for intent, rich as sin. Ding. Thank you, I say, through the pain, for your donation. What follows is 4 minutes the Academy will argue about for a generation. Cedric realizes his error in the same heartbeat he makes it. I watch the horror arrive, watch him try to recage himself. But fury is a flood too, and his has been rising since the word boots, and control abandoned once is control abandoned. He hits me. He hits me a great deal. He is the finest swordsman this Academy has produced in 50 years, and I am a low-market anvil with a ledger, and I wear what I must and slip what I can with his own vassal's footwork, and every single strike pays the doubled rate, and somewhere in the middle of it, the great hall starts to hear what I hear. Not the dings, they can't hear the dings, but the consequence of them. The tempo of the first blade of Ironspire, faltering. The displacement arriving late. The weather, slowing. He feels it. That's the thing I'll remember. Kessler never understood and Bren understood too late, but Cedric Vane feels the withdrawals in real time. I see it cross his face at the 8th landed strike, the impossible bank panic arithmetic, and he does the smartest thing anyone has done to me in 13 weeks. He stops. Mid-fury, mid-flood, he simply stops hitting me, disengages 3 full steps, and stands there in the chalk, chest heaving, staring at me with 82 points where 88 used to live. What are you taking, he says, quietly. Only for me. The audit face is gone, what's under it is younger and afraid. Interest, I tell him, just as quiet. On 4 generations. He almost leaves it there. History will note he almost left it there. But the gallery is full of falcons, and his father's treasurer is watching, and 300 years don't know how to walk out of a chalk circle, and so Cedric Vane raises the blade one last time and comes on with the discipline back, in place, controlled again, taxless again, and it doesn't matter anymore, because he spent 6 points teaching me his rhythm, and riverform runs on rhythm, and I am done being the anvil today. I take the first blade of Ironspire on the salvage yard steel, bind him the way Corvo bound me, and put him on the floor of the great hall with a foot sweep his own falling star of a family invented, and the point of my blunt stops a finger's width from the silver falcon on his collar, and the great hall of Ironspire Academy is so silent I can hear the provost's chain settle. Yield, I say. Or don't. Either way, tell your treasurer the anomaly's price went up. Yield, says Cedric Vane, first of 300, flat on the chalk of his own trial, and then so low that only I will ever hear it, with something that is almost warning and almost respect. They won't duel you next, Pike. Understand that. What comes next doesn't use circles. What the Great Hall does when the provost calls it is not applause and is not silence. 300 cadets stand up. They're commanded to, for the verdict. And somewhere in the standing, somewhere among the scholarship rows and the 200s and the walking wounded of every Friday this place has ever run, somebody starts stamping. 1 boot on stone. Then 10. Then the whole back half of the hall, boot iron on flagstone in time. No words, nothing a proctor can cite. Just the sound of the floor itself applauding, the bottom of the ladder making the one noise it has always been allowed to make. Wait. The falcons file out through it. The provost gavels it down eventually. But everyone in that hall heard the Academy's foundations discover they had a voice, and nobody who heard it slept quite the same. Lyra doesn't stamp. Lyra is already 3 moves ahead, and that evening in the loft her lamp burns until the oil goes. Because the trial gave her the thing 6 years of patience couldn't, a reason for every record office in the Academy to be in chaos at once. Rank frozen pending review means my books get subpoenaed by the provost's office, she says, pulling folios while I hold the lamp. Which means transfer manifests. Which means, for about a week, while the clerks drown, nobody is watching the transfer manifests. Her hands stop on a ledger spine, oxblood leather, no title. Rowan, look at this. Undercroft receipts move through a discretionary account. The discretionary account clears through the provost's office. 15% skim. Initialed DC, that's Caraway. That's her hand. I'd know it asleep. And the remainder washes out as placement facilitation fees paid by. She turns the page around, and there it is, stamped in blue and silver at the foot of a column 6 years long. House Vane. They're not just buying the bound, Rowan. They're buying them pre-priced. Malrek breaks the bottom rankers in the pit. The injuries justify the low rank. The low rank justifies the low price. Caraway stamps it. Vane banks it. It's not corruption in the machine. She sits back, and her voice has gone somewhere old and cold, 6 years deep, a ravine road with her brother at the bottom of it. It is the machine. It always was. And I am holding the double ledger that proves it. Then we don't need to beat them in circles, I say slowly, watching the shape of it assemble, the whole rotten arithmetic finally face up on one table. We audit them. We audit them, says Lyra Ashford and rules a fresh page. The provost's office moves before sundown the next day, which is how I learn Cedric told the truth. An emergency bulletin, her seal, her chain, pending investigation of instrument integrity, all monthly resonance retests are suspended indefinitely, and Cadet R. Pike is barred from rank assignment while the irregularity is reviewed. Rank frozen, wins voided in advance, a boy officially converted into a clerical error. The machine, having failed to correct me with a bully, a pit, a master, and an heir, has simply stopped keeping score. Lyra reads the bulletin twice and goes dangerously quiet. They've closed the front door, she says. That means the next thing comes through the back. It comes that night by Pit Runner on Undercroft paper. Malrek's hand. Master Peak. One final booking. A capital Gast, a closed card, an appreciative audience, and a house that pass its debs. You'll fall in the 4th. Gracefully. And folded inside it in different ink, the reason I read it standing very still, a page torn from a school ledger. Low Market Parish. Best letters in a row. A charcoal rubbing of my sister's name, and under it, in Malrek's kind, rented hand. Red boots. Easy to follow in a crowd. M. I don't fall in the 4th. I don't wait for their card at all. The rubbing of Mena's name sits on the loft table between us, and Lyra reads Malrek's kind handwriting once, and her face does the thing it did over the oxblood ledger, goes old and cold and very still. It's leverage, not a plan, she says. They won't move on her unless you cost them the match. Hostages are budgets, Rowan. You don't spend one before. She's not a budget. I'm already pulling my coat on. You've never watched a house decide a low-market child is a rounding error. I have. The letter says they know her school, her boots, her walk home. That's not leverage sitting in a drawer. That's a man already standing in my mother's street. My hands aren't shaking. That's the strange thing I'll remember, how quiet the arithmetic went, how the whole 13 weeks of patient bookkeeping burned down to one entry. The match is Saturday. Whatever they've paid for happens before it or because of it. I can be in Low Market by midnight. Curfew seals the gates at second bell. If they log you out, the provost voids you by morning. Then don't let them log me. Lyra Ashford looks at me for one long second, and then she does the thing that tells me, more than any confession under fever light, what she has decided I am to her. She opens her book to the Academy's own maintenance schedules and finds me a hole in the wall. Laundry sluice, east wing. The grate's been off its hinge since midsummer and I keep unreporting it. Porter shift change at first bell. She's writing the route as she talks, small ruthless hand, my life reduced to a marginal note. Rowan. The vessel. You're 4 days into the integration regimen and your walls are better, but they are not ready to be flooded twice. If it comes to hands out there, pace your collections. Promise me the math. I promise you the math. We both know I'm lying. She lets me. That's the other thing I'll remember. Low market at midnight smells like tallow and river and home. I come down the Cooper's Lane the back way, past the chapel where a stone once read 3, and everything is smaller than my memory keeps it. The doors lower, the lane narrower, everything except the fear, which has grown into something with a shape. Because Lyra was wrong about one thing and I was wrong about another. It isn't one man standing in my mother's street. It's 3, and they're already inside the shop. Through the mended pot window. My mother backed against her own counter with her chin up and her mending hammer in her fist. Mina on the stair in her nightshirt, red boots on the wrong feet, jammed on in the dark. And filling the little room like weather, 3 men in travel gray with the falcon picked out small on their collars, house retainers, the polite kind, the kind that never raises its voice because the house's whole weight speaks for it. Resonance 50s, the lot, and armed under the travel cloaks. A retrieval detail. They were never waiting for Saturday. The lead one is speaking as I open the door. Simply a sponsorship visit, mistress. The girl shows aptitude. House Vane invests in aptitude. The paperwork is all ready. The paperwork's canceled, I say. 3 heads turn. The lead retainer takes me in. Travel-stained scholarship boy, ruined boots, no blade, and I watch him price me off the Falcon's briefing sheet and arrive at manageable. And there, in my mother's shop, among the mended pots, the last polite sentence of the night gets spent. Master Pike, you should be at the academy. You should run, I tell him honestly. The problem with fighting 3 trained retainers in a room the size of a kitchen is everything. The gift of it is that a kitchen is low market ground, my ground, and that a retrieval detail's first instinct in front of witnesses is to make it quick, and quick means committed, and committed pays double. The first one comes to put me down with a truncheon draw. I've seen 100 times from the academy garrison. I let it land across my lifted arm. Ding, the frost script flares before the pain does, minus 0.52, doubled, and I take his elbow with my free hand and use his own committed weight to put his head into the door frame my father made. 1. The second is better. The second has his short blade out before the first hits the floor, and he doesn't waste breath on threats. Professionals never do. He just comes across my mother's shop in 2 clean steps, and my mother's shop becomes very educational very fast. A kitchen is not a chalk circle. There is no room to give ground, no crowd to play, a stair with my sister on it that his line of attack must never be allowed to face. He cuts me twice in the first exchange fast, forearm and hip professional withdrawals, nothing wasted. Ding. Ding. I bank them and buy nothing with the banking because he is not committing. He fences like a man peeling an apple, small and sure, and my stolen fractions read him late, and my mother is screaming and Minna is not. Mina is dead silent, backed up the stairs, eyes enormous, watching her tutoring money brother stop existing and something else stand in his place. Then my mother, 19 years a widow in a low market lane, 4'11" in her shop slippers, breaks a mended kettle across the back of the man's head. It doesn't drop him. Kettles don't drop resonance 50s. But it buys me the half-beat that changes the account. His blade line wavers off me for exactly as long as it takes a professional to decide the old woman dies second, and half a beat is the widest opening anyone has given me all night. I take his knife hand at the wrist with both of mine and put my knee through his elbow the wrong way, and the short blade rings off the flagstones. And he is very good, even one-armed. He fights me the whole way down, headbutt, boot, a thumb hunting my eye. Ding. Ding. Every strike still pays. That's the thing about hurting me that no briefing sheet has caught up to yet. Even losing, even furious, even one-armed in a potmender's kitchen, the bill runs. And the flood comes. 4 days of integration bought me maybe 10 points of new wall. It is not enough. The vessel fills like a rain barrel in a storm. Corvo's suspended fractions still queued. Now the retainer's pouring in on top, and the room doubles, and my heartbeat arrives late, and the frost script begins to stack warnings like a clerk gone mad. Capatis. Capaces. Integration suspended. And under it all, Rule 3, patient as winter, what you hoard will one day be counted. Count it then, I tell the script, and I do the thing I promised Lyra's math I wouldn't. I open the whole ledger and spend. Not 4 seconds this time. I burn it in a river. Corvo's queued mastery, Cedric's furious 6 points, Kessler, Bren, 13 weeks of Fridays, every banked and suspended fraction I own routed raw through a body 4 days too small for it. And for one impossible breath, in a potmender's shop in Low Market, there is a swordsman standing over me made out of everyone who ever hit me. The second retainer's blade comes in on a line I have never trained against, and my hand is already past it. Moving on. Borrowed genius, and I break his wrist against the counter and put him through the shelving. 2. The third, the lead, the polite one, is out the door and 3 steps into the lane when I catch him, and what stops me isn't mercy. It's Mina's window above and the light of it on the cobbles, and the sound of my own blood hitting them, tap tap, from my nose, both ears, because the spend is over and the bill has arrived. The world is graying at the edges. Suspended coctions, spent, says the script, itemizing my ruin. 31.7 points, gone. Vessel strain, sever. And the polite man is looking back at me from the lane's end, weaponless, whey-faced, memorizing my face for his report. Tell the Falcon. I manage upright by arithmetic alone. The anomaly makes house calls too. He runs. I sit down in the lane outside my mother's shop, and the last thing before the gray takes the middle of everything is red boots on the cobbles, on the wrong feet, running the direction the danger just went, running to me, and a small, fierce voice announcing to the whole sleeping street, "That's my brother," as if the sentence itself were a rank the stone could read. I spend 2 days flat on my back above the shop, deaf in one ear, 31 points poorer, while my mother mends me the way she mends pots, thoroughly, and with commentary. Mina does not leave the foot of the bed. On the first night, when Ma is downstairs rehanging the door on its ruined frame and pretending the hammering is about the door, my sister looks up from her spot at my feet and asks the question I've been waiting 19 years for somebody safe to ask. What are you? Not what did you do? Not what's wrong with you. What are you, the exact question? Asked the way only a 9-year-old or an archivist can ask it, straight down the middle of the thing. And because she is Mena, and because the gray men came into our mother's kitchen because of me, and because the whole doctrine of curating everything I've ever sent home just bled out on the cobbles with the rest of it, I tell her the truth. A version her size. You know how at school, some kids take things from the little ones? Coins, bread, whatever they can get, because they're bigger and nobody stops them? She nods, jaw tight. Her row has its Bren Colts too. The world let me be the little one for a long time. And then one day it gave me a rule. Now, every time somebody bigger hits me, a little bit of their bigness comes off on me. And they can't ever have it back. Mina considers this with the terrible seriousness of the best letters in her row. So the boys at your school who beat you up all year. Paid for your boots, I say. She looks down at the red boots. She has not taken them off in 2 days, right feet and all, and then back at me, and her face does something complicated and lands somewhere fierce. Good, she says, and that's all. No horror. No flinch. Just a low-market girl balancing the books and finding for the first time in her small, hard arithmetic that the world has finally posted a fair entry. Of everyone who has ever learned what I am, the archivist, the heir, the spider, my little sister is the only one who heard the mechanism and simply approved. It is, until the letter comes, the best collection of my life. On the second evening, she brings me tea wrong and information right. A boy from her school saw the gray men take the mail coach north at dawn. Not toward the academy, toward the capital. Toward, though I don't know it yet, whatever House Vanes keeps there for problems that survive retrieval details. And on the third morning, Ironspire's own crisis reaches Low Market ahead of me, riding the market gossip like a spark up a fuse. Something happened at the Academy assembly. The archivist stood up at rankings and read from a book nobody was supposed to have. Instructors confined to quarters. Crown seals on the record offices. Cadets refusing the yards. She didn't wait for me. Of course she didn't wait for me. I was a budget she refused to spend, so she spent herself instead. Rankings day, full assembly, Crown Observer in attendance as the charter requires once a term, and Lyra Ashford rose from the recorder's table with 6 years of patience and the oxblood ledger and read the machine its own entrails aloud. The Undercroft take, dated and initialed. Caraway's 15% DC, column after column. The placement facilitation fees. The Falcon's 6-year harvest of pre-broken children, purchased at rank-rigged prices, 31 souls last year alone. And at the name Marcus Ashford, rank 273, her voice, they say, did not break, and somehow that was the loudest thing in the hall. They tried to gavel her down. The gavel got as far as the second stroke, and then the scholarship rose stood up. Slamarsh first, they say, on a bench again, then the 200s, then half the yard staff at the doors. And boot iron came down on flagstone, once, then in time, the floor's applause, the sound the bottom of a ladder makes when it has finally been shown the receipts. The Crown Observer impounded the books on the spot. The provost's chain of office is, as of that morning, a chain of evidence. I hear all of it standing in my mother's doorway with my arm in a sling, and the pride comes up through the strain sickness like sun through cloud, and for exactly one breath the arithmetic feels finished. Then Sella's letter arrives by paid runner, and her farm girl hand is shaking on the page, and the arithmetic starts again with a new column dripping. Row on. They took her. Malrek's gun underground, and the pits are dark, but somebody sow lanterns below the armory. He told the committee he'd Surenanger the Undercroft ledgers personally. He meant hers. Rowan, he is Lyra. He has the books. He says the Null knows the price, and the card says Saturday. The Undercroft on the last Saturday is full, and this time none of the faces are hidden. Word went up through the academy like fire through a hayloft. The archivist taken, the pits lit one final time, the Null coming down the armory stair on a bad shoulder to settle every account at once. They followed me down. That's the part Malrec never budgeted for. I came through the fighter's gate with half the scholarship rows at my back, Selamarsh in front, and behind them, arms crossed, in plain clothes with the falcon trim torn off his collar, Bren Colt. The bottom of the ladder, arriving in force, uninvited, unpriced. The tiers are packed with everyone the machine ever chewed, standing shoulder to shoulder with the city betters, and the flat-eyed bookmakers read the room the way they read everything, and quietly closed their slates. Lyra is in the ring. That's Malrec's theater, a chair on the sand, the archivist bound to it with dignity intact, because the spider is many things but never crude, and the oxblood ledger in both her folios stacked on a brazier's edge one gust from ash. She has a bruise at her hairline and murder in her audit eyes, and when she sees me clear the gate her mouth shapes 3 words with no sound. He's not alone. He's not alone. Beside the brazier stands the capital's answer to an anomaly, a man in a gray traveling coat with a long sword slung soldier fashion, no crest anywhere on him, which in the language of houses means deniable. Marcus Sarn, the card had said, when the card still pretended this was sport. Resonance 90. The number moves through the tiers in a whisper, 90-90, and I look at him and know Cedric told the truth. This was never going to be circles again. This is what the ladder sends when the rungs stop working. Master Pike, Malrec's voice carries the way it always carries, kind as rot. You've cost this establishment its future, so consider tonight a liquidation. 1 match. The gentleman requires a demonstration of the mechanism for his patrons, and I require the books to burn with a clear conscience. Fall gracefully by the 4th, and the arc of Watt's Watt, and the ledgers are all that die tonight. He smiles the rented smile a final time. You do keep teaching people that hitting you is expensive. His patrons pay in advance. The truth arrives in me with a strange calm. They know. Not the mechanism's name, not the rules, but Vane's retrieval detail reported Cedric felt his own 6 points leave, and somewhere in a capital drawing room, men with 3-century ledgers have concluded that whatever the Null is, it must be either owned or erased, and they have sent a 90 to establish which. Rowan. Lyra from the chair, voice steady the way it was, steady reading a machine its entrails. The cue. Your walls. You're 31 points down and 4 days healed. The math. I know the math. I step onto the sand. I've decided to run a different column. The bell is the same hammer on the same shield rim, and Marcus Sarn crosses the sand like a bill collector. What the tiers see for the first 3 minutes, is an execution conducted by a craftsman. A 90 is not a Corvo. Corvo was a master of a trade. This is a master of an outcome. He cuts me with a patience that has nothing to prove, small precise harvests, and my body reads each one a full thought too late, and the collections pour in richer than anything I've ever banked. 0.9, doubled for intent, again, and the flood rises with them, because 31 points of wall died in low market, and 4 days of drills bought back 6. The world doubles by the 6th exchange. My nose opens by the 9th. The frost script stacks its warnings. Capitis, and Malrec watches the nosebleed with the satisfaction of a man watching his one good theory pay out. Flood the Null. Drown him in his own income. And here, on the last Saturday, in the drain at the bottom of the world, I finally do the thing I have been building towards since a stone in a chapel read me at 3. I stopped treating the pain as a fee. Everyone in my life has priced my pain. The Academy priced it at 3 coppers of subsidy. Bren priced it at a Friday's entertainment. Malrec priced it by the seat. Even the system, my system, prices it. The fee, always the fee. Pain is the cost of doing business. And bleeding into the sand under a capital blade, with my sister's red boots and my mother's kettle and Lyra's ruled columns and 600 stamped boot soles, all living somewhere behind my flooded eyes. I understand at last what low market has been trying to teach me since before the frost script ever found me. The pain was never the fee. The pain is the proof. Proof I was there. Proof I stood. Proof they had to hit me. Every scar a receipt. 19 years of receipts. And a man holding every receipt for every blow the latter ever struck does not owe the latter fear. The latter owes him. So when Marcus Sarn commits to the thrust that is meant to end the demonstration, a killing line, patient no longer, 90 points of the capital's certainty behind it, I do not slip it, and I do not wear it on the guard. I walk into it. The blade takes me through the same shoulder Corvo took, and I hear the tears scream, and I do not care, because walking into it collapsed the one distance a control master never surrenders, and my hand closes on his sword wrist, and for the first time all night the 90 and the Null are standing in the same arm's length of world, skin to skin, and every single thing that happens in that arm's length pays me. Collect, I tell the frost script out loud, blood in my teeth, everything. He fights the bind like the professional he is. Pommel, knee, the crown of his head, textbook releases hammered into my flooded skull. Ding, 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 doubled every release another receipt, and I hold, and the vessel screams, and I hold, and somewhere in that terrible embrace, the capital's certainty meets the same mathematics that met Kessler and Bren and Corvo and Cedric. The arithmetic no briefing has ever survived. You cannot beat the Null by hitting him, and you cannot beat him without touching him. The gap between those two sentences is exactly the width of a low-market boy who will not let go. Marcus Sarn's 90th point leaves him somewhere in the 4th minute of the bind, and I feel the moment he feels it, the bank panic, the impossible withdrawal. And a 90, a true professional 90, does what no cadet and no pit king had the wisdom to do. He stops fighting me. He drops the sword, steps back off the bind, opens both empty hands, and stands there in the torchlight, diminished and dead calm, reading me the way 20 campaign years read a field. Yield, Marcus Sarn says, offering his, asking mine, one word doing both, and then to the tears, the flat voice of a man revising a report that very powerful people will not enjoy. The demonstration is concluded. It can't be owned. Tell them I said so. He picks up his blade left-handed, sheathes it soldier fashion, and walks out of the Undercroft past Malrec without a glance, the way weather, and the pit is silent as a counting house at midnight, and every account in the room comes due at once. Malrec moves for the brazier. He never reaches it. It isn't me that stops him. I'm swaying in the middle of the sand with a shoulder full of hole, spending my last clear thought on standing. It's Bren Colt, off the tier wall in 2 steps, who takes the spider's collar and sits him down on the sand like a schoolboy, and it's Sela Marsh who lifts the oxblood ledger off the brazier's edge with both hands, gentle as a midwife, and it's 300 witnesses in the tiers, cadets, kitchen staff, 2 magistrates who came to bet and stayed to testify, who make the arithmetic final. You can buy a committee. You cannot buy a room that saw. The crown seals come down on the Undercroft by morning. They find the sub-ledgers under the sand floor, the ones even Lyra hadn't traced, and the names in them reach so far past the Academy that the word capital stops being a place in the story and becomes a verdict. Provost Denna Caraway is escorted from her office before the noon bell, chain of office in an evidence box, by the same crown observer who impounded the books at assembly, and on the steps in front of the whole yard, it is Cedric Vane who testifies first. Voluntarily. Formally. Against his own house's accounts, in exchange for nothing, his father's treasurer white-faced beside him, because whatever else 3 centuries teach, they teach a man to read a balance sheet, and Cedric read his family's true one in the great hall the day a Null told him what his grandfather's levies cost by the head. Honor is a strange bird. It roosts where it likes. The binding is suspended by Crown Writ 11 days later, pending review. The writ says, but everyone from the scholarship rows knows what a pardon looks like when it's wearing clerk's language. 30 names come off the terms list. Selamarsh's father tears the bank's papers up on the chapel steps in front of witnesses. And in the archive loft, with her bruise going yellow and her books returned under seal receipts, Lyra Ashford opens the honor rolls she keeps, the ones she said her brother would never be in, and enters, in her small, ruthless, perfect hand, a correction 6 years overdue. Asikford, Marcus. Rank 273. Cause, the machine. Case, reopened. The last retest of the term is held on the first day of spring, under Crown supervision. On a stone they have checked and blessed and checked again. They call the roll by rank, and the hall is full, and there is no rank 1. Cedric stood down from the trial results himself, pending his house's audit, so the proctor simply starts at the top of the alphabet of the irregular, which means the hall gets its answer first thing in the morning. Pike, Rowan. I walk up the steps in ruined boots. I put my palm on the stone. The needle swings past 11, past 40, past Bren's old 68, past Corvo's 74, past the 88 that used to sit on top of our year like a crown, and the brass god of Ironspire, 2 centuries old, honest to its last tooth, runs out of dial. The needle pins at 100, and the stone hums. A long, low-struck bell note that no proctor in the hall has ever heard, the sound of a machine meeting a number it has no digit for, and the proctor looks at the dial and at me and does not call for a retest, because the hall is already on its feet and the floor is already thundering, boot iron on flagstone, in time the applause of foundations, and somewhere in it Sella is on a bench, and Mina is on Bren Colt's shoulders, red boots drumming, shrieking the rank the stone can't print. Lyra finds me on the archive roof at dusk, the way the important ones always find me. No lantern needed tonight, spring light lasting long. And she doesn't say congratulations, because she is not built for it and I would not believe her. She sits an arm's length away, the arm's length we've kept all term, and she opens the book she's carried up, and I see she has ruled a fresh page into 2 columns, and at the top of it, in her small, ruthless hand, Peak and Asford, joint accounts. Assets, she says, pen ready, entirely composed, except for the one imprecise second, where her eyes come up to mine. We should itemize. These things only work if you keep honest books from the first entry. I look at the page. Then I close the distance the ledger's been keeping all term, and the first entry goes unrecorded, and for once, the bell in my skull has nothing to add. It waits, of course. It always waits until the quiet. I'm halfway down the archive stairs, her hand still warm in mine, when the frost script unrolls across the spring dark one final time. Not the ledger hand, not the warning hand. The old hand. The one from a chapel stone 3 years ago, patient as winter, keeping the rule it never explained. Term complete. Coctions 1406. Intergration exeming. Vessel expanding. Rule 3 tith bearer. What you hoard will one day be counted. The audit is a scheduled. The collector has your ledger. He is very pleased with your growth. He is coming to balance the books. I stand on the dark stair a long moment, reading it twice, and Lyra reads my face the way she reads everything. The other end of the book, she says quietly. The other end of the book. She doesn't flinch. She turns to a fresh page and rules it and writes at the top in the small, ruthless hand that broke a machine. The collector, accounts outstanding, and under it, first entry. She writes my answer before I say it, because by now she keeps my books better than I do. Let him come. We'll count together.